My name is Heather Lockett, and these are Lasting Conversations.
I'm her producer, Brian. I'm here to sort of guide this, and because I'm also fascinating in lasting conversations. When did you become fascinated about lasting conversations?
Well, I realize it's really been my whole entire life. I've been talking to people. Essentially, I would have to say in the beginning, my grandmother would have tea time, and she would gather her friends and our family together, and they would just talk about their day, do needlepoint, and I was consumed with being in that room by the fire, having tea, listening to all the different scoop of the day and the who's who and what's what and who in the family stinks and all that other good stuff. So it's been...
You wanted to be part of the Algonquin Round Table era.
Quite literally. Quite literally. We'll get into that later. And then that just moves forward. I've been doing this. People feel comfortable, and I love sharing.
At a young age, were you like, I want to be part of those conversations? I want to be part of those adult conversations. I want to be part of the fascinating ones.
I was always drawn to that. I really was always drawn to the adult conversations. And I would play with kids and have friends and stuff, but really it has been the adult conversations that I felt most comfortable with. Yeah,
I mean, the art of conversation, people take it for granted because it's something we do from the time we say data, because it's something that we all do many, many times a day, but I don't think we appreciate what it means. I don't think we appreciate the bond that can be connected. I don't think we appreciate how much better a meal is when there is conversation involved. I think people are really drawn to Thanksgiving and they talk about the food. It's really about gathering and communicating and sharing and remembering the people you're with.
Absolutely. Which kind of interestingly segues into my bulk of my career time has been hospitality. And so that very notion of people gathering at a table together and doing that very thing, and whether it's at a party or a mitzvah or a corporate event, whatever is happening, it is that very thing of people gathering together and sharing. The other thing is I've been known to have my own dinner parties. So when I landed here in Florida from Massachusetts, the vibe is very tiki and cocktail parties and Bahama beach vibe. And I'm like, yeah, that's fun, but let's sit down at a table that is set and talk and share our meals together. And my friends just love that. So that's one of my legacies here, if I would say.
I agree with you. Yeah. I made that comment once that conversations or public places, I'll say, watering holes or restaurants or whatever, sound differently in different parts of the country. In a place like Los Angeles, where I've spent a lot of time, there's a lot of looking around and less engagement with who you're at the table with.
Right.
That's a different sound in a restaurant than people sort of, which is, not to stereotype. I'm from the Northeast. The Northeast people are more fully engaged. They have more big personalities. There is something about a lot of the ethnicities up there, the Irish and the Italian and the Jewish, and that they're debaters.
Yeah.
Without getting angry at each other. They are deep thinkers. They are a little less, no offense to anybody here in South Florida, we're all here in South Florida, whatever, superficial about it. They want to go to a place that's going to trigger emotion within the conversation.
Right.
And you miss that probably being here sometimes, right?
Well, I have, but I have been really graced in finding new family, people who are welcoming, because everybody was from somewhere else and had left their home bases. And so those very Thanksgivings, and I came with young kids and we became new family. And so I've been able to really forge that combination of having some really deep conversations and meaningful friendships that are long lasting, all the while having that wonderful Florida blend and more of a Southern flair where it's more friendly.
Yes.
And it's easygoing.
It is.
And it's not...
they ease into the conversation. We're a society now that wolfs down our dinner and we don't have time for the conversation. You go to different parts of the world You go to Israel and Hebrew always sounds like two people arguing over parking space, like it does, but they are engaged and they are passionate. And that's a really good thing to be around. It draws out others, even if you're just listening to other people, like
Right.
you're being triggered by things within the conversation. I think we don't appreciate, the art of conversation, but I think we don't appreciate having conversations, because the most meaningful things that you probably experience in any given day are nothing but a conversation.
Correct. And even if it's at the grocery store with your cashier, I mean, if
Yes.
there's that nano engagement of looking up, giving a smile, and being friendly for a few moments, I mean, that alone is a conversation.
What do you think makes a conversation memorable?
Oh, well, sometimes, I mean, even just yesterday, I walked down the street and there was a smile and there was this quick engagement and there was something else about it. I forget the details at this time, that it was memorable because I knew it landed and it was important to that person in that moment. And there was another piece.
You made them think and you made them feel.
We engaged each other in that moment, that we each saw each other and had a moment that we said, hi, human to human. There was another moment, perhaps more deeply, where a bit of synchronicity that I wasn't planning on walking into a store, walking into Costco, and I did, and I was looking around at all the different stuff, and then there was a woman that walked by, and I can tell that she was in a certain fog, well, because her husband is gravely, gravely ill. And I thought for a second, should I just let it pass? No. And I called her name, and I called her name again, and she turned, and I just said, would you like a hug? And yes. And she ended up saying, thank you for seeing me. I really appreciate it. And there was nothing for me to do, to say, to fix the scenario or anything, but it was just, I'm so sorry, and would you like a hug? And then we each went on our day. That was a memorable moment.
It's an advantage you have. I can't go up to people and say, would you like a hug?
Well, I knew her.
That doesn't help. That's
And
true too.
I knew her. We knew of each other.
Well, and that's an important thing. More than ever, hopefully, we appreciate conversations, because in a lot of the country, people were not able to gather. They were not able to communicate.
Correct.
They were not able to be face-to-face. They were not able to share holidays and all that kind of stuff together. I hope people appreciate it more now and understand, of the things that they missed, that's probably number one, is sitting one-on-one or around a table and engaging.
Right.
And feeling that.
Well, interestingly, the other piece of that, which was a gift for me, was she said, I'm so glad when I see you on Facebook. I love your photos. I love your sunsets. Thank you. And so to your point, we have also collectively forged different kinds of relationships and conversations virtually.
And that's true too.
That's true too.
Some people are like, I like what you said. I'm like, well, you didn't comment on it. And they're like, no, I didn't want to get involved. And I'm like, the point is engagement, even if, don't send me a secret message that you agreed or disagree with something, like get in on it, And some people don't want to do that anymore. We are very fearful in this country now that a conversation will turn into an argument or a discussion, because we have our guard up and we come into things a little bit angrier than we used to, which is not a good thing. People should look forward to opinions and questions and challenging each other and going to a deeper place than, hi, how are you?
Well, that's very true. And when you said angry, some are, but really I think it's fear. People are just afraid, and which ultimately means that they're afraid to speak and they're afraid to have an opinion because some yahoo might jump all over that.
Or they're afraid, like, my experience story isn't entertaining enough. It's
Correct.
not interesting enough, even though it meant, and I'm like, if it means something to you, that's all that matters. And then people should be able to tell that because it meant something to you, that the whole thing matters. And some people are sort of so in this influencer world we're in, and look at me, what I did. And if you just said, like, you know what, the highlight of my day was the hard-boiled egg I had yesterday, and it was just the best one ever, I want to hear all about that, because I want to know why.
That's exactly it.
That
is exactly it. If that was the squirrel playing on the fence, that is mesmerizing, because that took me out of worry mode or circular thought mode let me just watch this squirrel today.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. If you could ask somebody to describe the squirrel, I guarantee you that when they started to think about it and what they saw and felt and witnessed, and like, I guarantee you that would be as exciting as somebody saying that they, rappelled down a rock face somewhere.
Sure.
Like it would. Like people don't take enough pride in their experiences and what if it meant something to you and if you felt something and you were able to convey those things and in sharing them and just sort of being honest about it and tapping into what it was about that, that's a good conversation.
It really is. And it's almost like a children's book. When you read to children or you're with kids and through their mind's eye, they may have never seen a squirrel before. And they're having a nut, and then the nut does this, and their teeth do that. And so by bearing witness to that is fantastic. But what I was thinking as you were talking is in children's books tend to break it down like that into observation, and there's cute illustrations and stuff. And so I think sometimes when we've been away from kids and that whole thing, we can forget to have the beauty of the observation and what is a squirrel and how do they get their food and all that other fun stuff. So it can be very playful too, childlike almost.
Yeah, it does. I say as a podcast producer, I always say that a great podcast should sound like a great conversation. Mm-hmm. And I say the things that drive a great conversation are passion and curiosity. And when you are passionate about whatever it is you are talking about, and you are curious about it, meaning like, why did I feel this way? Or what was it about this experience? And what do you think about this versus it's a lecture, or this is what happened, and it's just the basic facts. You go to that emotional level of the conversation. That's what makes it special, and that's what makes it memorable.
Right. And you had my curiosity. That has been my whole life also. Why and how come and how does this work? And why do you think like this? And how does it feel? What does it feel like to fall in love? All these questions, always. It was from this sense of curiosity about another person and about how life works and who am I in this world and all that other fun stuff.
I ask people that all the time because people use the word love in 100 different, contexts. Right. I love pizza and I love my wife. People. It's a word. It's a very multi-purpose word. So I say, what does love mean to you in a romantic context? What do you mean when you say I love someone? And you ask 100 people, you're going to get 100 different answers. And I think that's a good thing. But I think sometimes people haven't even thought about it.
Right.
They don't know how to define it for themselves, which sometimes makes it harder to find. And so before you ask questions of other people in a conversation, I think, without walking around talking to yourself all the time, you sort of have to have this inner dialogue of why do I feel this way? And then try and ask people, why do you feel this way? And then collectively share these feelings.
Exactly. I think that's so very true. And even say a word like love, which is from many perspectives, and that's the whole point. What is my perspective, which is going to be very different than somebody else's perspective, and where do we find the singular, that nugget that we can come together? And It doesn't even have to be agreement, but if there's a certain resonance, it's a certain come from. I understand your side or a different side, but we ultimately come together in understanding that this is a particular moment, whatever the conversation is about.
Yeah, that's a good point about agreement. And I've said this, and it mostly pertains to women. She doesn't necessarily want to be right, but she definitely wants to be heard.
Everybody wants to be heard.
Right. And I think people forget that in a conversation, that some people tend to tune out if it's something that they either don't agree with or they don't understand or they feel it's not relevant to them or it doesn't interest them, instead of taking the one step and asking an extra question that is going to, now I see, that is interesting to me.
Right.
I'm still thinking about the squirrel from 5 minutes ago. Like I really, because I can see that. I'm like, I want to watch all day long the behavior, We've experiences all around us. We need to share the stimuli.
Exactly. And so how we speak with each other can vary so extraordinarily. And as a podcast guy, I'm sure you know that a lot. But to go to your point about perspective and engagement and it has to start with curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
And my goal here is to find people that share that. And it's more than I have something to say, meh, meh, meh. It's we have something that we can share together.
Mm-hmm.
And from my perspective, I would like to share this, and that I would engage them in what it is that they need to voice.
Yeah, and some people are like, well, how do I get into conversations? How do I have conversations? I'm sort of by myself. How do I? A question and an answer is a conversation.
Correct.
People need to get better at and less fearful of going up to possibly a stranger and just say, like, are they serving the pumpkin spice latte? And going from there, you know, can I barbecue this? You know, I don't know. And going from there, asking a question shows that you are interested in what they have to say on the subject matter, even if it's just information coming back to you. And that's, conversation, you're hitting the ping pong ball across the net, looking for somebody to hit it back, and you're trying to go as long as you can back and forth, right?
Exactly. And this, I'm sure, will be a whole topic in terms of these days, the technology and the phones, and our heads are down, and we're talking with virtual people versus maybe the person right next to us in that latte line. And so sometimes we have forgotten, or maybe there's certain generations that feel more comfortable in virtual lines.
Yeah, or they need some sort of virtual connection before a real connection. Mm-hmm. Some people are like, I need to at least have connected with them online before I can meet offline. It seems real strange to go up to strangers. Now, again, you brought up earlier, we're also fearful. It's not a healthy thing. And so the conversations need to come back, and they need to come back in a better way. The name of the podcast is Lasting Conversations. How would you describe a lasting conversation?
It's in those moments. The lasting part comes in where it goes into the history of where I began with that very name, which is from the elders telling stories. And so having something last it's in the ethers, it's in the memory bank. And when something is voiced, it lasts. It's in the air. It's like music. Music lasts forever. And essentially, to get a little etheric, that's why it's a lasting conversation, because it's there, it's happened.
The vibrations continue.
They do. They do.
That is a good way to look at it.
Right.
It's like sort of the old thing about that we learned in high school science, I think, about energy. It's not created or destroyed. It's just transformed, like it never ends. A conversation should do that.
Right.
A conversation should always end on the ... It should always be to be continued. It should always be, we will pick this up at another time or place or moment or feeling, and understand that, you know, that's again, I go back to hitting it back and forth. I think you want to do that as long as possible with as many people as possible forever, I would think, right?
Right. And this is something to think about.
Right.
Until next time.
Yeah, think about this. ... And,
right.
The most important thing about a conversation is it makes you think in a way that maybe you have never thought before, and it makes you feel in a way that maybe you've never thought before.
Correct.
And the most casual conversation can do that. And it might not even be immediate. It might be 2 years later, and you're like, you know what? That's what she was talking about.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. It may land years or decades later.
Right. So the value in this interaction or this moment or this dinner might not immediately in the distractions of life land with you, but there's value in having it, and that value may sort of manifest itself down the road, and that's why there's value in having it at all.
Exactly. And that's the fun part. It's an exploration and a journey. And
is it worthwhile for somebody to say, like, I need to have X amount of conversations with X amount of people in a certain day? Should conversations be goal things, or is it an exercise? Is it a muscle we need to exercise just like anything else?
In some ways it is, although I wouldn't say add it to the giant to-do lists that we already make up in our head.
True. And you shouldn't devalue it.
Correct. So whatever is an organic, natural occurrence is an important thing. And again, we're in different times, and people are traveling, and the conversations are virtual. They are online. They're on telephones. They're on Zooms, and they are one-on-one. I am team human, so it is important to leave our offices and our homes and our cars to be somewhere where there's another human being at least once a day. That really is important.
What do you tell somebody who's hugely introverted like me and fears a lot of conversations? Once I'm in a conversation, I'm all in. But I'm like unwilling a lot of times to take that step to find out because I'm scared I will be involved in a conversation that will not interest me, which is terrible because it really is against what I just said, is you need to find something in it. But what do you advise somebody who's shy or introverted, or they're worried about getting stuck at the wrong table, or sitting next to the wrong person at the dinner party? Like, there's a lot of angst that goes on to the possibility of what should be enjoyable.
Well, that's hilarious because I'm very similar, actually. So that's a very good question, Brian. I think that gets into stepping out of our own comfort zones and engaging in some way. And if it goes off the heezy real quick, you go, okay, got to go. And it's as simple as that.
Is that how you get out of a bad conversation? Got to go?
No, mentally.
That's an art too.
There is an art to that.
I've never mastered that, which is my fear. If I learned how to work a room, like just keep moving. Oh, great. You need anything? I got to go. That's a very valuable skill in life, which I do not have.
Well, it's
that's not a lasting conversation. That is a short conversation.
And that's okay. And that's
okay.
Truly okay, as a matter of fact.
Because a short conversation can be lasting.
In ways that we don't want it to.
Right.
So,
like, oh my God, I got a headache from that 30 seconds with him. Yeah.
Well, and that's just it too. And so sometimes if we learn how to read a room and we're drawn to certain people, or then we get to pivot and go, okay, I'm over here right now. Because we don't have to stay where we're not meant to be and where it doesn't feed us. And same with the other person. If I've had those moments too, where there's a certain engagement and then it's like the universe literally spins us each around to just leave the scene. And that's okay because it wasn't going to go well.
One of I think the best kinds of conversations are the sharing of memories.
Right.
Even if you did not know this person 30 seconds before.
Correct.
You both have memories of life or a time or a place that you can share.
Correct.
So I think knowing what, once in a while taking a personal inventory of the things, the people, the places in your life that mattered or you felt something or whatever, and then having the ability to share those proudly.
Right.
I think people will engage with that.
Right. And that's a lot of fun to share our collective memories and our personal histories and things like that.
And to see how they're different. Wait,
to
that's
see how
not what happened. Or even be like, the memories of a certain thing. I'm like, wait, what? No, I don't remember it like that. That's can be fun.
Right. You put 5 family members in a room, you get 5 different stories for one incident.
Which can be wildly entertaining. It's perspective and point of view, and people remember some details that you might not remember.
Correct. One of the things that I've done with my meetup groups and things has been show and tell, good old-fashioned show and tell. And so talking about memories, if people, especially as they're downsizing or they're moving or their parents died, whatever it is, this table linen or this trinket or this piece of art, what did it mean? And sometimes because everything has a story, even the items, they have something to say. And then if that means that it can help someone with their downsizing to move along to the next person or to sell or whatever, but the show and tell does that thing with memory and it gets into that collective storytelling and it becomes part of our histories.
Yeah. And, family members a lot of times go their separate ways, but at some point when you circle back, you do have that foundation of memories.
Right.
And memories should, are always a good starting point. Even if they're not fond memories, they can be like, well, here's how I grew or learned or pivoted from this incident and what I remember about it. And just sort of you're opening up emotionally and realistically and sharing. Like the conversations, sharing all of those things.
Well, and that's your base.
Yeah.
Your original family, that's your home base. And however it went down, it's still your home base. And so exactly what you were just saying. How then have people moved on or just knowing we bore witness to this together. And then our lives did our own thing.
What are some, and I know this is like asking you to pick a favorite child, but lasting conversations for you personally that you're like, you know what, I ran into this person this one time and then 4 hours later, we were still talking. Do you have anything like that?
Oh, I've had tons of those.
Right.
I've had tons of those where
You're like, I've had 3 of those today.
We'll meet for lunch for an hour and it goes on for 7. I mean,
Wow.
that is a thing. That's an official thing.
More bread, please. Wow.
All of
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. As long as they're not a line out the door, we're good to go. But for today, that question, I have to land with my grandmother. And she liked her naps, or nippy nappy new. It was just a time to lie down. And I would go in and she would share some of her things. So one of my lasting conversations with her, what I didn't realize is going to be one of my last conversations with her before she died suddenly of a stroke. And so we had gone there I had asked about her childhood and I had asked about her mom. And so she was sharing some of these things from a very deep place. And she was saying things like, I'm going to be 78, but it's a funny thing because inside I feel like I'm in my 20s and I loved my 20s. And she just went on from a really beautifully deep and emotional space. And so that is a lasting memory and a lasting conversation because that was quite literally one of the last big moments that we had, but we didn't know it was going to be a big moment, and yet there it was.
I think the most interesting conversations or the most memorable ones are more often than not somebody who was older than you.
Correct.
It's amazing the things that senior citizens, is that a politically correct term anymore? Aged Americans, I don't know what it is. People over 75 can talk about, they might not be able to tell you what they had for breakfast, but they can tell you about 1958.
Exactly.
They can tell you about their wedding day.
Yep.
They can tell you about things with detail and clarity and emotion that you're going to learn a lot, you're going to grow a lot, and you're going to be glad you asked the question. The best questions I remember asking are questions of my grandparents.
Correct.
I learned more things that I remember to this day from my grandparents than I ever did from my parents, because most of the things from my parents didn't feel like conversations. They felt like chores.
Well, daily activities.
Daily
right.
activities, or it was the sort of mundane. It was the minutia of the day and whatever. Right. So you wouldn't have a special time. It's like, oh, I don't see these people often. Let me ask something.
Right.
Or they would ask me something, and it would go to a place that I could not get this experience or information with any other people.
Right.
But that age group, that demo, and that relationship between grandparent and it's like, your mother never shared this, but let me tell you this.
Exactly.
And it goes to a place that you remember years later.
Years later. And right, so to speak with the elders and the littles, to listen, even if they're babbling, they're saying something.
Yeah.
And from their perspective. So, but again, going back to the wisdom of our older generation, it comes from that depth of knowledge and a whole different perspective and their history and from their come from and what the world was like in their time. And it's also very, very rich.
Yeah, you can have a great conversation with a 77-year-old and you can have a great conversation with a 7-year-old. Because
Correct.
a 7-year-old is eloquent enough that they can converse.
Yep.
And they're at their peak imagination.
Yep.
With no fear, no pressure. The world is in front of them, and they notice everything.
Yep.
They're curious about everything. Don't just be like, I need to talk to people that are like me in the same experience and shared and had a date Friday night, and I need to go over this. Like, you need to broaden your sort of bookends on who you think you should be talking to.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Having multiple people, multiple cultures, multiple countries, multiple ages, that's what makes us human, and that's what makes for rich conversations and how we can really forge together as humans on this planet to get to know each other.
What are your hopes for this podcast?
I'm hoping people are going to have fun. They're going to have a really interesting and dynamic place to learn some things, and also to have a gentle space where we'll go deep without some of the harangue that's out there. And we'll get some meditation. We'll speak about all kinds of interesting things with lots of folks. And I want everybody to feel comfortable to listen and enjoy and have some fun takeaways. and that ...
That's a good point that you brought up about the meditation and the calm. Some people tend to have most of their conversations from a place of, oh my God, I got to tell you what happened,
Correct.
whatever. Being in a calm mental space can actually help you go to a deeper, more meaningful place in a conversation than you thought, because you weren't unbridled with distraction and emotion and the events of the day.
Right. My goal is not to talk at people. We're going to be engaging with people, including the audience and the guests that are here. And that's the conversation. That's like breath. You're in and out, you're back and forth, you're up and down, all of that dynamic stuff.
Good.
So,
See, this was a lasting conversation.
It is. It is.
Good.
Thank you.
Tell everybody how they can find you or...
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us. And this first time around, this first major lasting conversation. And if you have any questions or comments, you can drop me an email at podcasts@lastingconversations.com.
And review the podcast. Your reviews mean a lot in the podcasting universe.
Thank you, Brian.
And you have a little catchphrase like, go out today and have a lasting conversation. Anything like that? Or did I just throw that to you? And we're going to develop that over time.
We will do that. But just know that we get to the heart of everything.
Oh, see? She trumped me in a moment. Goodbye, everybody.